International Research and Educational Society presents Derek Partridge, Jordan Maxwell, and special guest, Bill Jenkins.
Hello, I'm Derek Partridge. Because of the nature of this program, we felt that it was important for me to tell you a little about my background. I've been a journalist, author, TV reporter, news anchor, and talk show host for some 30 years in England, Rhodesia, and the United States, where I was a news anchor with Financial News Network, hosted Law in America, and Emmy Award-winning PBS specials. I've also been a spokesman for such companies as Bank of America, Transamerica Occidental, the American Red Cross, Warner Brothers, and Arm & Hammer. I've never belonged to any organized religious group, and my personal beliefs are simple and basic: to do the most conscious good and the least conscious evil during my life.
Mr. Bill Jenkins.
Man's religions, from the very beginning of recorded time, even into the pre-Cro-Magnon days, is filled with symbolism and traditions. As he tried to do something to put himself right with forces greater than he, his creator. Could have been a fire, or a cloud, or a mountain. As man became more sophisticated, he became more sophisticated in his concept of really what that power was above him. But with all of those traditions came symbolism. Symbolism for Judaism and Christianity is this: the Holy Grail, filled with wine. Or was it blood? To find out more about that symbolism, let's go to Barbara Walker's book, A Woman's Dictionary of Symbols and Sacred Objects, to find out about the cup. Symbolism of the cup is complex, beginning with matriarchal images of the womb vessel and passing on to its patriarchal replacement, another kind of blood-filled chalice of resurrection. The cup remained, the blood was masculinized. The womb's life-giving moon blood was reinterpreted as the blood of a male who naturally had to die to produce it, because men never could learn the female trick of bleeding without injury, though it wasn't for lack of trying. In dying, the male victim became a savior whose blood was supposed to give rebirth, just as mother blood used to do. Symbolism. Symbolism in all of our religious life. But the ancients were right, those that predate even Judaism and Christianity. There is something about having a proper relationship with forces greater than you. Today we'd say there is something right about having a proper relationship with the creator of this universe, our creator. Many believe that there is a piece of that creator who is a part of us, that we need these learning experiences to become more godly, that our nature, character, and personality is naturally the same nature, character, and personality as the one who created us. Now the question is, does that come in myths? Does that come to you through traditions, ritual, rote? Or does it come through doing, really wanting to be that way? Not doing it out of fear, not doing it because someone told you that if you do certain things, that you will be very godly, that you will be actually fulfilling this great need, which is a part of all of us, and that is to have a right relationship with that force greater than us, the Creator, God. Let's look at this symbol of Christianity, the cup filled with wine. It had its origin in Christian history when Jesus had the Last Supper with the disciples, and he told them that this cup, which was filled with wine then, represented his blood, which was given for the salvation of all mankind. Here again, the masculine giving his blood, whereas the woman can give her blood without hurting. Traditions, symbolisms. Is there anything magical, really, about a cup of wine? Later on, the Grail or the cup itself took on great new powers and became known as the Holy Grail, and it was what caused the Crusades to go down and search for it. Its magical wonders. Really. Are we looking for magic when we look to try to improve the quality of our spiritual life? Or are we using tradition and ritual and rote as an easy way out from doing the very hard task of being a loving, caring, godly person? It takes determination, it takes will, it takes desire, and it takes understanding. Do you get that understanding from reading books of myths? Do you get that understanding from reading the story of Jesus, which sounds almost like the story of Krishna, which sounds almost like so many others as you'll hear about here? Or do you get that understanding from an inward knowing, from the very spiritual voice that you have within you? We're talking about your spiritual involvement, your spiritual growth. It is not done by doing things. It is done by being something special.
In this program, we're going to deal in verifiable facts, something that cannot readily be found in most aspects of most religious beliefs. Every one of the world's thousands of different religions claims to represent the only truth, which of course implies that all the others do not. So if you have chosen to be, or through parental upbringing or school education, became a believer, how can you be sure that your particular faith is the right one? Okay, let's suppose it is. Well, that would then make everyone else in the world sinners. But on the other hand, if your faith happens not to be the correct only one truth, then that would make you a sinner, wouldn't it? And if you're a non-believer, does that mean that you will have to pay an eternal price for your non-belief after your death, just because you didn't believe? After centuries of human existence, no one has ever yet come back from the dead with incontrovertible proof that there is anything beyond death, which also means that countless thousands of people who have spent their lives preparing for the next life may just have been wasting their time. And even if we suppose that there is something after death, as no one knows exactly what it is, how can you possibly prepare yourself for an entirely unknown situation? Although it must be acknowledged that a great deal of good has been done in the name of religion, it is by far the saddest and most tragic aspect of religion that throughout history, more men, women, and children have been slaughtered, tortured, and mutilated because of religious beliefs than all the people who have died in all of history's secular or non-religious wars. Even more sadly, in today's supposedly enlightened age, the slaughter, the torture, the mutilation, and the deprivation of basic human rights continues unabated. And weren't we taught that religion was supposed to be something to do with love? Despite this, there are still those who will argue that religion, regardless of its origin or credibility, serves a valuable and benevolent purpose in society because of the underlying teachings about being a godly or simply a good person. Again, sadly, the facts contradict this view. As in most countries where religion is widely practiced, there are more social problems and more crime than in many other countries where the practice of religion is less common. So the equation that being religious equals being a godly or good person is a long way from being universally true. And by studying the facts of history, we will find that it has never worked this way. Of course, one must acknowledge that, as with any rule, there are exceptions. But the godly or good persons are distinctly in the minority compared to all the evil that has been committed and continues to be committed, all in the name of religion and God. Consider just a few historical examples. The Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the slaughter of Christians in Rome's Colosseum, the Catholic massacre of the Huguenots in France, the burning and drowning of witches at Salem, Massachusetts. And then today, Arabs and Jews continue to kill each other throughout the Middle East. Catholics and Protestants murder each other in the streets of Northern Ireland. Hindus and Muslims assassinate and massacre each other in India and Pakistan. And Christians and Muslims decimate each other in Beirut. As religion is the cause of all this slaughter, religion cannot possibly be the solution. It is not only murder and torture. How about the daylight robbery and extortion through implied threats and induced fear of your money by self-centered, corrupt, and sex scandal-ridden televangelists? These people, with their artistically groomed and moussed flowing locks, their fashion designer clothes, I'm talking about the men, and the women with their thick makeup, garish lips, and false eyelashes. Have you ever seen such vanity? And religion is supposed to espouse humility. What we will now offer you are facts, not fiction, myths, fairy tales, and allegory. However, as is often the nature of facts, they will probably be very uncomfortable for many people. They will undoubtedly shock and anger some of you, as they will challenge age-old beliefs and the very basis of the religious belief system on which you may have based your whole life. But these facts cannot possibly be as shocking and ungodly as the death, destruction, robbery, and suppression of truth that for centuries has epitomized the practice of religion. And please remember that I deliberately said, offer you facts, as it is not our intention to be like so many missionaries and other religious proselytizers whose purpose it is to force you to change your beliefs under the threats of hellfire and eternal damnation if you don't. We just want you to listen, watch, and make up your own minds. In order to better understand what we humans are today, and so what we are likely to become tomorrow, we need to look back and study our origins and where we came from. Try now to imagine Earth in prehistoric times, a place filled with a multitude of dangers, giant animals and reptiles, huge predators, earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, and meteors, and the subsequent fear and hostility such an unfriendly environment would breed. If you could be a time traveler and be spirited back to these ancient times, complete with all the sophisticated modern knowledge you now have, admit it, you'd be scared to death. I know I would be. Now try to imagine what it must have been like for these ancient people, totally devoid of all the knowledge we now take for granted about the awesome forces of nature. A volcano erupts, destroying everything in its path. The sky reverberates with thunder as a violent electrical storm hurls thunderbolts to earth, which start fires. Tornadoes sweep people, animals, and trees away into the sky. The earth opens up and an earthquake swallows a village in the twinkling of an eye. Pretty scary stuff, still is today. But try and think of it as if you had absolutely no understanding of these natural occurrences at all. Then at night, gazing up into those fearsome skies filled with infinite numbers of stars, not to mention shooting stars, without having the remotest idea of what they were. I've slept in the desert at Petra in Jordan. The stars are not above you. They surround you like a giant canopy, and in the crystal clear air, you feel as if you can reach out and pluck one from the sky. However, lacking any form of scientific explanation, is it any wonder that these ancient peoples created a myriad of all-powerful nature gods and the countless myths that surrounded them? The gods which have been worshipped and sacrificed to for thousands of years since. For example, it was the mighty Thor who, when angry, struck his anvil with his hammer and created thunder, and the same Thor who, from his abode in the clouds or heavens, flung his lightning bolts at the terror-struck mortals below. If, alone in the dense forest, you, hardly surprisingly, felt fearful, and you sensed the presence of an unknown threat, well, that had to be the forest god, Pan, from whom we get our word panic. And at night, when it became cold, dark, dangerous, and downright frightening, without a convenient and comforting light switch, who else came out to rule but the fearsome Prince of Darkness? Then came the dawn, and with it light, warmth, and new life. And who brought it, and in so doing defeated the Prince of Darkness? none other than the sun, which became known as God's Son, the light of the world. Human beings are the only creatures capable of the process of logical thought, of imagination, and of questioning everything around them. In fact, the very evolution of humans has been dependent upon our ability to seek, find answers, and adapt. However, a small weakness has been that if a logical answer was not readily available, human imagination often invented or created suitable and at least temporarily satisfying answers, such as the very basic need to have a reason to explain our existence, and the equally important need to feel that life must be for some purpose, and that it cannot simply end at death, but that there must be something beyond. This remains as true today as it was for ancient man. Consider again how little ancient man knew compared to us. In order to create some livable with explanation, gods and myths had to be created. All questions require answers, real or created, so that we can get on with life. So perhaps we can also understand why people sometimes killed or sacrificed other human beings to satisfy or placate the angry gods of nature. For example, to try and stop Thor from hurling a thunderbolt specifically at you. At the time, man didn't know any better. Supposedly today, we do know better. Sometimes you, like me, may wonder if we really do. Despite the existence of many larger and more powerful creatures in the jungles, man became and remains today the undisputed ruler of the earth for one simple reason: his mind. To make the closest analogy, we are both smaller and weaker than gorillas, but our minds are considerably more powerful and sophisticated. And yet, we continue to shed blood today, perhaps even more than before, and still in the name of the same god or gods and the same myths. Haven't we learned anything? Ancient man had to contend with countless areas of ignorance, which over the centuries gave way to informed enlightenment, with just two glaring exceptions. We still persist in the ancient ignorances of religion and myths, two words which have one definition in common. They are both nothing more than beliefs. Look at it this way. Would you consider running your business according to an instruction manual written some 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, and then translated 20 or more times before you read it? I very much doubt it. Yet many of us unquestioningly base the entire conduct of our lives on just such a manual, a collection of stories called the Bible. It is not merely having a superior mind that has allowed man to rule or dominate the earth, but by using it to create the ever-increasing array of technical wonders, sadly all too many of which are devoted to the sole purpose of destroying fellow man. That mind has not really changed much over the last few centuries, but because some brave people refuse to accept invented, convenient, or expedient answers, such as the earth being flat. Do you know it was once religious heresy, punishable by death to believe otherwise? And instead they continued to question and explore until such time as a logical and provable answer could be ascertained. Because of that, we have been able to progress from caveman to modern man, but still with the previously noted and glaring exception of religion, where we still stubbornly cling to unproven and unprovable centuries-old myths. Moreover, many religions tell their followers not to think, but to blindly follow their moral dictates, just as soldiers are drilled not to think, but to blindly follow orders. Isn't it strange how the orders issued by both religious and military leaders are often exactly the same? Go out and kill some of your fellow human beings. And both of them justify their killings in the same way, as being